Hi, I'm Kris Somerville, and I'm here with TMR's editor, Speer. For the past 30 years, the meat and potatoes of our magazine has been fiction, poetry, nonfiction, but we're also known for our found text History as Literature feature. Why don't you tell me, what is your favorite found text feature, Speer?
I'd have to say it's the oldest one we published. The oldest original document we published was one that was found in the Judean desert by Bedouin tribesmen. It's called the Book of Jubilees, and it's one of the Dead Sea Scrolls that had not yet been published. It's a document that is a different version of the sect of Genesis, written by this sect who lived on the Dead Sea.
How on earth did the Missouri Review get a hold of one of the Dead Sea Scrolls?
Almost on a bet. A
Really?
group of editors were in my office, and I asked what was the most unlikely document that we could publish, and one of them jokingly said the Dead Sea Scrolls. And so I got on the phone and began to call around, and much to my amazement, got one of the Dead Sea Scrolls scholars, James Vanderkamp, who was editing the Book of Jubilees. To our amazement, Oxford Press was happy for us to publish the Book of Jubilees because the project was taking so long to do that it didn't matter that it would be published early.
What is the Book of Jubilees?
It's a document that was apparently very important to the keepers of the scrolls. At least 15 different copies of it were scattered throughout the different caves where the Dead Sea Scrolls were found. And it's generally thought to be one of the most important documents among the Dead Sea Scrolls, which include canonical works of the Old Testament and sectarian works that relate to this group, and other writings from around the beginning of the Christian era that they claim were written by Old Testament prophets. And Jubilees is a retelling of much of the story of the Jewish people from the creation to the encampment at Sinai.
So essentially you're saying it's a retelling of Genesis and Exodus.
Yes, it is. And because Jubilees retells a story well known, both to the keepers of the scrolls and to us, the narrative in Genesis and Exodus, and because the book was so important to their community, it provides a really great sample of their beliefs. It naturalizes the mythic events concerning the founding of Israel according to the sect's way of thinking. Professor Vanderkamp believes that internal evidence in the scroll places this document, the composition of this document, somewhere around 150 BC.
Remind me of the story of its discovery. Who discovered the Dead Sea Scrolls?
A Bedouin shepherd lost a goat, and he threw a rock into a cave thinking that the goat had gone into the cave just above the Dead Sea, and he heard the sound of pottery breaking. Inside the cave, he and his friends found several scrolls and ceramic pots. They took them to Bethlehem to a part-time cobbler, part-time collector, who in turn sold them to the Archbishop of the Syrian Orthodox Church for the equivalent of about $250, 60-odd dinars. And the Archbishop describes that 60 dinars as the total of his savings at the time.
Remind me again, when did this happen? When did this occur?
It was happening literally at the moment of the partition of Palestine by the United Nations and the subsequent outbreak of war in Israel. The Archbishop was transferred to the United States, where for years he tried to get interest in the scrolls, to sell them to an educational institution or a library. And scholars are much in agreement that one of the scrolls described the beliefs of an order who lived in the wilderness and who were waiting for the Messianic age. And they knew that the document also included a complete book of Isaiah from before the time of Christ, which was 1,000 years older than any previous version of Isaiah. Archbishop Samuel finally resorted to placing a want ad in the Wall Street Journal to try to get somebody to buy the scrolls.
So what, they were just too amazing to be believed?
Precisely. And by chance, one of the few men in the world who was both savvy enough to know the scroll's value and powerful enough to affect their purchase was a man named Yigael Yadin, who was an archaeologist, and the son of an archaeologist, and he also happened to have been a military hero from around the time of the partition. He bought them and donated them to the state of Israel, and later helped create what would be a permanent museum in Jerusalem. Bedouins continued to scour the caves on the western edge of the Dead Sea where they had found these documents. And 6 years later, they began to find more scrolls. The fourth cave was the most, they had numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, through several caves. And the fourth cave was the most dramatic because it included fragments of 700 to 800 manuscripts.